Flashback to the year 2014. Kids in your gym class are asking if you've seen Shrek is Love, Shrek is Life. You're spending late nights playing Titanfall. Real ones ran Ogre Titan with Arc Cannon, Big Punch, and Nuke Eject. Impact Font made things infinitely funnier, and a disgustingly well-regarded and praised show. A show that managed to sink its vile, gross, and overall unpleasant fangs into the hearts of many ever since its godforsaken release on November 3rd, 2014. I never did watch that show because I never sat down to watch it whenever it was aired, so I actually missed when it came out. Roughly 7 years later, or 2021 for those of you who need fingers to count, some friends sat me down and we watched the entirety of the show in only 2 hours, and I gotta say, it was probably one of the biggest wastes of my time. If it's not obvious already, that waste of time was the playlist of MatPat's FNAF theories. That waste of time was Over the Garden Wall, and yes, it is in fact that bad. And you can trust what I have to say because it's only been 2 weeks since I've watched the show in 2 hours, barely remember that day because I was really sleepy by the end of it, have only rewatched the first 30 seconds of the first episode, skimmed through the second, and glanced at the 9th a few times, as I'm currently writing the script. And in a few seconds, I'm going to cut myself off for comedic effect. I've heard the show praised left and right about how fun and imaginative the characters and settings are, so you can only imagine my disappointment when the show suddenly greets us with a mental minigame of who the main character is. Is it the frog with the piano? Is it the girl and the dog? Is it the fish literally cannibalizing its own kind? After an agonizingly slow 1 minute and 23 seconds into this excruciatingly confusing introduction screen, I'm led to a scene of a gnome thing and an elephant walking in a forest, with the small elephant introducing the frog, obviously the main character, and before the name is settled, the dumb gnome-looking guy stops him and says that the frog's name is Greg. Am I just supposed to forget every other name that the frog supposedly named Greg was being called? After the gnome thing and the small elephant continue in the forest, taking screen time from the frog supposedly named Greg, they meet a man and don't ask directions, and instead meet an admittedly super cool talking bird. I don't know how you could dislike this bird, it's such a cool bird. Like, if I were to meet a talking bird, this would at least be number 2 for talking birds I'd like to meet. My only problem is that this supposed blue bird is gray for some reason. Anyways, the cool bird leaves, and the man apparently named the woodsman, which is weird because he looks like he's made out of the same skin and bones as anybody else. Either way, he comes back, so the gnome and the elephant go back to the house with the woodsman, and then the gnome so that's cool, I guess, and then they kind of fight it, but not really, then it falls in the water. And yeah, that's the end of the first episode. It's okay, nothing too crazy, but I can see why people like it. After all, I'm not here to nitpick. Finding the first episode almost unbearable with the exception of the super cool bird who I don't know how you could dislike. We move on to the second episode, where the elephant is talking to the gnome and he continues to ignore him. A little after, they end up finding a talking bush, but don't worry, they don't actually find a talking bush, that would be ridiculous. Bushes don't talk. The cool bluebird from earlier is stuck in the bush and actually happens to be blue this time. She does end up promising the elephant a wish for getting her out of the bush, so that's good. Oh, and the bird's name is Beatrice, apparently, and the frog has a new name now, and he's called Wirt Jr., whoever the real Wirt is. The gnome guy seems upset about this name, probably because he wanted to be named Wirt Jr. I mean, I would too, if I was the worst. Then the gnome guy steps on the pumpkin like an idiot, and the elephant makes a cool pumpkin shoe, because it's totally in right now, and if you didn't know, get up to date. Then they meet a pumpkin guy, or two, and they dig up skeletons, and the skeletons are actually dead guys, and they're the pumpkin people and they party or something. Oh, they also got sentenced to labor because they broke a pumpkin, I think. We only have the gnome to blame for that. After all, the elephant was just being hip and cool and inside the inner circles. Or triangles. Why is it a circle? That's at least 8 or more people, but most people have an inner circle of like 3 or 4, so at most it's like a inner line. Or maybe that just means people are points. Circles don't have points, so that's what makes them special, I think. Oh, is it that time of day already? Well, get ready for a little game called Is It a Rock Fact? Feel free to play at home, just get a piece of paper and a writing utensil. I don't judge. I'm going to ask a question and you tell me whether or not it's a rock fact, and if you get it right, you earn points. So first up, did you know that if you soak a raisin in grape juice, it turns into a grape? Yep, that's a rock fact. If you got that right, go ahead and add 3 points to your score. Okay, time for question number 2. Did you know that dinosaurs had big ears, but everyone forgot this because dinosaur ears don't have bones? If you said yes, you're wrong. That's completely untrue. But it is a rock fact, so feel free to add 5 points to your score. Question number 3. Did you know that trees don't actually make sounds when they fall? They just add the sound when you're around because they like to show off? If you said no, you're correct. That isn't a rock fact. So go ahead and add 1 point to your score. But it is a real fact. Rocks aren't ready to confront the truth yet. Last question. Did Greg steal the rock from Old Lady Daniel's yard? If you said yes, you're correct. That is a rock fact. Go ahead and add 4 points to your score. If you got everything right, you should have 13 points. However, if you did write with a Pilot G27 black ink pen, go ahead and add 2 points to your score. And if you end this with 15 points, I know you cheated and skip back to play again, and you should be ashamed of yourself. Coming back to episode 9, we're in the gnome's room for some reason. Only, wait a second, where's the hat? Where's the coat? Turns out the gnome isn't even a gnome, so not only is he a poser, but we've been lied to this entire time. Recovering from the betrayal of the gnome's identity, he has made a tape for some reason for a person named Sarah, which he breaks and then fixes for some reason, before we see him put on his outfit and go to the football game, and we meet the elephant, who thankfully still appears to be an elephant and not a liar, saying goodbye to the old lady young man Sir Daniels. After learning a short lesson in hard work, plot points happen because they do, and the gnome ends up at a party, and they leave because and they go and at the graveyard party, everybody likes the elephant because he's cool, and the cops come over and they run or something. That's not important. The big part is that they climb on a wall, intending to, I don't know, maybe go over it. That's like the title of the show. And they hop over it, revealing that's how they got in the forest in the first place. But wait one moment. That's not a garden wall, it's a graveyard wall. There's a huge difference between the two. This is the final straw for me. You can play little games of what everybody's name is, you can have great bluebirds, you can even lie to me about the whole time over who is a gnome and who isn't. But this is too much of an inconsistency. What's the difference between a wall of a garden and a cemetery, you might be wondering? And let me tell you, that's huge. Firstly, let's look at the supposed garden wall, and we can tell by the design of the wall that the individual bricks, if they can even be called that, appear to be stacked on top of one another. These bricks appear to not be made of the clay or shale you typically see in your modern brick, whereas you may notice the bricks in this specific wall happen to be gray even under a flashlight, which signs to the brick having a higher amount of limestone than iron in the brick. But why is the brick being made of limestone important? That's because unshaped limestone bricks don't really sound like the kind of thing you would be building even in a garden wall from the 70s, which we can guess that's when the show takes place, in at least the 70s, because the gnome tries to give Sarah the not bee but dresses like one a cassette, which were created in that time frame. But you know what is pretty old, and we use whatever stone is around made locally? Because why would a recent graveyard be already filled with lots of graves that have clearly been there for a long time? Because it's not a garden wall, it's a graveyard wall. Honestly, I'm just disappointed. A show so popular, so spoken of, and regarded as one of the best cartoons that's ever been aired on Cartoon Network. You would think somebody would have noticed the glaring problems with this show, that maybe if somebody had cared enough to ask questions about the holes in the show, we wouldn't be here. From the gray bluebirds, gnome posers, also I take it back, Beatrice is number 3, Pippets are way cooler and they can't even talk, and that's not even mentioning the wall the entire show is based on, having a complete disrespect towards the art of graveyard walls in the 20th century. It's these constant problems with the show that have forced me to rate Over the Garden Wall as a 9 out of 10. Terrible show that might have had that extra point if Beatrice was a Pippet.
Led through the mist by the milk light of moon, all that was lost is revealed. Our long bygone burdens, mere echoes of the spring. But where have we come, and where shall we end? If dreams can't come true, then why not pretend? How the gentle wind beckons through the leaves as autumn colors fall, dancing in a swirl of golden memories, the loveliest lies of all.
Thank you, that was my Arthur Morgan cosplay.